All right, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us. My name is Emily Matzberger and I work in the Education Abroad Program Office here at UCSB. I'm glad that you guys are here for the housing meeting because it is such an important thing to consider now, even when you're applying to go to DC or abroad. With me today is our presenter, Jen Burcham, who's going to introduce herself, and then she will give the presentation on behalf of housing for you guys. Jen?
Hi there, my name is Jen Burcham, and I'm one of the managers in University and Community Housing Services. And I'm going to be giving a presentation about EAP and housing options, depending on when you're planning on going abroad. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and I'll run through the presentation. Feel free to pop questions in the chat, and then after the presentation, I can go through those questions, but you can also unmute after the presentation and ask me anything. So let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay. So our office oversees university and community housing. So we oversee all the residence halls, university apartments, graduate housing, and family student housing. And then we also oversee community housing. So we maintain relationships with landlords in Isla Vista, Goleta, and Santa Barbara. And we have a rental listings website, and I do mediation and advising for roommate conflicts and landlord-tenant disputes. We do one-on-one housing assistance for students, faculty, and staff. So we try to help students. If you're not sure where you want to live, we'll meet with you and we can kind of go through pros and cons. And I do educational programs like this about housing options. And we also have a success guide, everything you need to know about renting in the community. So the first thing that you should really think about is when you'll be going abroad, because that's going to determine kind of what your housing options will be. So if you're going to be going abroad in the fall for community housing, if you sign a lease in the community, you're typically going to have to find a subleaser for summer and fall. So if you're not going to be here for summer, you'll have to find somebody to sublease from you for the summer, and then you'll have to find somebody to sublease from you in the fall. Sometimes you can find somebody who will be here for both quarters. Sometimes we have some fifth-year seniors who need a few more classes, or somebody who's studying, coming here to study from abroad and coming early. So we would encourage you to sublet. Typically, we only encourage you to sublet for about 3 months, because when you have a subleaser for 6 months, there's damages that could possibly occur. It does happen, and I just want you to know that if you do that, it's just really important to have a security deposit and also work with your current roommates so that they know who they're living with. For UCSB housing, our application process for UCSB housing actually opens on Monday at 10 a.m. So if you're considering UCSB housing as a continuing student, you need to apply starting Monday, January 30th at 10 a.m. and then the process closes on February 16th. So in order to be considered for a contract offer, you have to apply in that time frame. If you're not sure when you're going abroad and you want UCSB housing, go ahead and apply. And if you get a contract, you can sign it. And if you do happen to go abroad in the fall, or winter or spring, you can actually cancel. And if you're going on UCDC or an EAP sponsored program, there's no fee to cancel. So if you're going to be gone fall and winter, I wouldn't recommend subletting for summer, fall, and winter, because that's just a really long time to have somebody else in a space that you're legally responsible for. So typically I would tell students, if they are going to be abroad for fall and winter, when they come back, they can apply for UCSB housing during winter quarter for a spring quarter contract, or you can actually look for a subleaser for this you can look to sublet from somebody for spring. There's usually a lot of vacancy in the spring. There isn't a whole lot of movement happening in spring with people looking for housing. So typically in the spring, you'll have a lot of options. And then for UCSB housing, you would just apply in the winter quarter. The process opens for a spring housing contract, and we typically have a lot of vacancy in the spring. If you're just going to be gone for spring, then I would and you're living in the community, You can actually try to sublet to somebody in the spring, but I have to be honest that the spring quarter is the hardest time to find somebody to sublease. I just don't see a lot of movement happening in the spring with students moving out of their residence looking for a sublease. So it's just something to think about when you're going abroad, or depending on where you want to live, is that the spring is the hardest time to find somebody to sublet in the community. For UCSB housing, if you sign a contract with us and you go abroad in the spring, you would just submit your cancellation 30 days before you leave UCSB housing, and there's no fee for canceling. You just, in the cancellation notes, you say, I'm going abroad on an EAP program, or I'm going on UCDC, and then we'll email you to send verification to us of the program you're going on, and then we'll cancel you with no fee. If you do sublet, it's super important that you get everything in writing. So if Emily contacts me and wants to sublet from me, I have to make sure that I have a lot of information. So we have a subleasing form that I'll show you, and I would make sure that Emily fills all of that out. I would get information from her, like a picture, like a photocopy of her driver's license. If they're international, a photocopy of their passport. I would ensure that they're a UCSB student as well, because often with UCSB students, if something happens, we have the ability to look them up and be able to contact them. But if there's somebody in the community, it's a lot harder for us to be able to track them down if something happens with their space. So if Emily sublets from me, I essentially become her landlord and she becomes my tenant. It depends who you're renting from in the community, but sometimes management companies don't want to get involved with subleasing, but sometimes they do ask that whoever you find apply so that they are verified through their system. And it's going to just vary from lease to lease. So when you're signing something in the community, just make sure to check the subleasing portion of your contract, and it'll tell you of your lease, and it'll tell you exactly what they expect for subleasing. I would definitely make sure to take a security deposit. Typically, we ask students to take a security deposit that's equal to 1 month's rent. So if your management company is not getting involved with all of that, then Emily would pay me, let's say the rent was $1,000. She would give me $1,000 and I would put that on hold until she vacates tenancy, and then I would return it pending there's no damages. But typically I would take out a little bit for cleaning. And so sometimes what students do when a subleaser is leaving is everybody pays in to get the house fully cleaned, and then a portion of the money that Emily had paid for her security deposit will go towards that cleaning fee, and then that way you can return the rest. I have, I'm doing a lot of subleasing programming in the spring, so I'll make sure that Emily knows what those dates are so that if you have questions, you can ask them, or you can always just email me. There are international students who come to UCSB, and a lot of times they're looking for a sublease for the quarter, but most often they're looking for furnished places. So if you're gonna not be here for summer, it could be really helpful for you to have your furniture in there. So that way, if somebody's just coming for a quarter, they don't have to buy all the things. And I think sometimes often that makes it just your posting will just be more readily viewed if it's furnished versus if it's not. And then this is a portion of what our sublease agreement looks like. It looks pretty basic, but it's really important to fill it all out. And then if you have additional terms or house rules, you can always have additions to that on the back, and just make sure that everybody signs it. And then you keep the original and give a copy to your subletter. So we have a rental listings website, like I like to call the glorified Craigslist, because only UCSB faculty and staff can log in. But on this website, you actually can post your sublease. So you would log in with your UCSB net ID, and you go to the sublease tab, and on that tab, you can post your sublet that's available. There's also Facebook groups. I'm an admin on these Facebook groups. I don't run them, but the reason why I became an admin is I noticed a lot of students were going to these Facebook pages. So it's UCSB Housing and IB Housing for UCSB students. But I'm just going to warn you that the number of scams that are on these have increased tenfold, and I really monitor them to kind of delete anything that's suspicious. So I just ask that if you use this site to find a subleaser, that if you're paying money or you're receiving money from somebody, that you check with us before you make any transactions, just to make sure that things are legitimate. And you can email me, and this is our information for our main housing info email, and I check that as well as my staff. And then our phone number, our staff answers that Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. And then we also are open in office from 9 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. Sorry, we changed that. So it's not till 5 p.m., it's till 4:30 p.m. But I'm gonna stop sharing my screen because I'm going to put my direct email in chat so that you all can email me directly. So I had a question from Ryan, our websites and places to find people to sublease. So I would say the UCSB rental listing page that I put on there, and I'll put that in chat, rentallistings.housing.ucsb.edu. And then I would also look at the Facebook groups. I think a lot of students use that. And then somebody just told me that students are utilizing Shoreline. I have yet to go onto Shoreline, but there some students were creating sublease roommate group type chat groups in Shoreline. But I'm going to open it up to questions. Parker, Kyle, Jasmine, Ryan, do any of you have questions for me?
So like, say we're planning on doing like off-campus apartments, but we're gonna be gone fall quarter, so we still sign up on January 30th, right? For like that housing contract?
I'm
Or
sorry,
how
say
does,
it one more time. You're living in the community or living in UCSB housing?
like UCSB like apartments, like
Yeah.
San Joaquin or something like that?
Right. So the contract, you would have to apply on January 30th, so Monday.
Okay. And then, so like if I'm gone fall quarter, you said I cancel it?
Yeah, so what's going to happen is the reason why I want you to apply is because sometimes, especially during the pandemic, students, their program would cancel last minute or it wasn't guaranteed that it was happening. So I typically tell students not to cancel until they have their visa and their passport and everything in hand and tickets to make sure that the program is really happening. And then once you know that, then you can cancel. And then you'll cancel and then reapply in October for a winter spring contract.
Okay, and if I get the first contract, am I guaranteed to get the winter spring contract?
There's no housing guarantee, but we typically house all students for winter spring who apply, or we did this year.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And then Kyle, are you going to have a roommate group?
I mean, I have some that I would apply with.
So that's the only reason why I'm asking is a lot of students who go abroad that have a roommate group, they're bummed because when they cancel, there's no guarantee that that space is going to with your roommate group is going to be available in the winter and spring. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I
Okay.
kind of already planned for that, but thank you.
Okay. Does anybody else have any questions?
Yeah, so I'm thinking of going abroad like spring quarter. So when I apply, when do I cancel it?
Cancel in winter quarter before you go abroad in spring.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And I just want to remind you that the process for continuing students for UCSB housing opens on January 30th at 10 a.m. and it closes on February 14th. So it's really important that if you want UCSB housing and you want to try to get a contract, that you apply on time. Are there any other questions?
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can a little bit.
Okay, sorry, I'm in a kind of a public space.
No.
If I'm planning on going abroad in the fall and want to either sublease or find someone to sublease during the fall and summer, or get into a lease for winter and spring. do you think I should be like, I've kind of been checking right now, but should I be doing that in like October, you mentioned?
Yeah, so you're trying to look for a subleaser for this summer and this fall. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would start checking, like start posting for that and looking in the spring. It's really too early right now for students to know that they're staying for summer. So typically when all the subleasing happens is right at the beginning of spring quarter.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And Ryan, I would also, maybe just know that typically in the spring quarter is when students find out that they may need to take additional units to graduate. So a lot of times it's really nice to find somebody who needs summer and fall. So I would post on those Facebook groups and post on our rental listing website that you're looking for somebody for summer and fall, because that way you can somebody would be really happy to be able to just stay in one space for continuously instead of moving around, and it'd be easier for you too as well.
Oh, that's a great idea. Thank you.
Yeah. So start there, and if you can't find somebody for that whole time, then you can at least try to find two people, somebody for summer, somebody for fall. But you just have to make sure that your roommates are on the same page, because you may be abroad and they may need to oversee the changing of the summer person moving out and the fall person moving in.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then if I wanted to find, because I know like housing right now for next year is kind of going on or has already happened.
It's
yeah. If I'm looking for housing so I'm planning to be gone, should I be looking for winter and spring housing? Should I be waiting to do that if I wanted to join a lease later? Like, how does that work?
Well, it's up to you. If you want to sign a lease, in the community, you just have to know that you're going to have to sublet that space for summer and fall, right? But you can always come back and apply for UCSB housing in October when the process opens for a winter spring contract, and alternatively look for winter spring housing, which is typically easier to find than because a lot of students are moving around at that time. But it depends. It could be stressful either way. It could be stressful trying to find somebody to sublet, but it could also be stressful to find a place to live when you're abroad. So I would try to choose the one that would make you the least stressed, so that when you're abroad, you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, lesser of two evils kind of thing.
Yeah, I think, if I were to do it, I would go abroad and apply for UCSB housing in October for a winter spring contract.
Okay, thank you so much.
Because I just think trying to find a subleaser can be really stressful, and then you don't want to be abroad and have issues come up with your subletter while you're not there. And then I think the UCSB housing option for winter spring is just an easy option for re-entering from being abroad.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Well, I put my email in chat, so make sure to copy and paste that, and feel free to email me any questions you might have about the housing process. And everybody's situation is so different. So if you weren't able to ask me a question, or you remembered something after our presentation, just feel free to email me and I'll respond, and we could always set up a time to Zoom if that works.
Any other questions? All right, well, I do want to thank Jen for her time and all the useful information that she's given us. I am really glad that all of you guys have attended today. Like I said earlier, this is a very important topic, and you guys should be asking questions now so that you guys know where you'll be living before or after your program ends. Having said that, I will end the recording now, and we will probably send it out to our EEP and UCDC cohort. So thank you so much, Jen.